Welcome to the Spiritual Principles Made Practical podcast. I'm your host, Scott Friedman, and today I want to share with you some of the worst commonly held thoughts and beliefs in our society. Because when we're aware of them, then we have a better chance of opting out and not falling prey to the destruction and the pain and the suffering that these incorrect, commonly held thoughts are responsible for. And the first one I want to tackle is this whole concept of uh, we thrive when we put other people first. It's just wrong. I mean, it's the whole thing, right? They tell you in the airplane, you put the oxygen, take care of yourself first so you can take care of other people. But in our society, there's so much pressure that says that, if you do for others, they'll reciprocate. If you put others before you, then they'll put you before them and stuff. And you know what? It's a lie. It's not true. And people are so angry that this doesn't work that I believe that denied anger is the primary cause of cancer. Might be right, might be wrong, but that's what I believe. And I believe that the anger that comes from putting other people first with the expectation that they're going to reciprocate in kind and your life's going to be great produces so much anger when it doesn't happen. And I've seen it firsthand. I've seen people die. And I mean, I was with them through their dying process, and it was the anger of putting other people first that was what was killing them. And I mean, this is my own mother, right? I spent time with, and so I mean, that's pretty close to home, right? And so people think, oh well, it's selfish to put myself first. And I had this conversation with my wife a long time ago, and I said, well, I'm a very selfish person. She says, oh well, I'm sorry to hear that. Then you're not really going to be that supportive of me. And I said, no, exactly the opposite. Part of my self-image is I see myself as being a kind and nurturing and loving and supportive and wonderful husband. And so I'm going to do everything I can. And certainly I'll fail and I'll make all kinds of mistakes. And sure enough, in 37 years of marriage, I've made plenty. But my point is that I don't resent her. I'm not expecting anything in return. I'm being as kind and supportive of her as I can be, and I'm doing it for myself because it makes me proud of who I am. And that's a lot different than saying, I'm doing this for you with the expectation that you're going to reciprocate in kind. And if you don't, then I'm going to be angry and feel cheated, right? And that's not a helpful thing for anybody. So the idea that if we put ourselves first, that other people will suffer is wrong. So by me putting myself first and working on my own growth and development, it gives me valuable information to share to other people. I have more to offer. If I don't increase the acceptance of my own value, then I won't be able to share it with other people for their art, for their benefit and for my benefit. So this idea that that it's selfish and wrong to put yourself first is a very, very, very incorrect and destructive concept that, thank God, not everybody in society subscribes to that, but far too many do. And it's a real shame because it's hurtful and it denigrates anybody. It goes back to that old concept of what I asked the rabbi: is it arrogant to say that I'm this wonderful person with all these traits? And his answer was, as long as accepting that enables you to help and support yourself and other people, it's a good thing to do. And so that's the idea of, if you put yourself first, then you have more to offer others. And when we offer something to others, if we offer it because of the joy of giving. So I invited a friend of mine to have her daughter and some of her friends over to play in the pool when it was really hot. And I did it because I thought, oh, I felt so much joy around making the offer. And while they were in the pool splashing and giggling and laughing and just having a wonderful time, I just felt so much joy and so proud of myself that I had created this. I made the offer. I made the offer repeatedly. I encouraged it. I created this experience of love and joy. And I was so proud of myself. And the way that I see it is that I'm 10 on the scale of how wonderful it is for me, and they were 7 on the scale of how wonderful it was for them. So I still feel like I got more out of it than they did, but we both got a lot out of it, right? And so everyone involved had an increased experience of joy, but I did it for myself. So I could experience that joy. And undoubtedly, the more joy that I experience, the more it spills over into supporting other people and them experiencing joy as well. And that's just one of an infinite number of examples of how when we put ourselves first, we have more of value to offer other people. When we put other people first with the expectation that they're going to reciprocate, it almost never goes well. Now, what's true is that when we, give for the joy of giving, giving is his own reward, right? When we give for the joy of giving, then it is true that oftentimes, not always by any means, but sometimes, people will want to reciprocate just because they want to have that experience and joy of sharing the value they have in a way that uplifts themselves and other people, just like I talked about. And so I've been the recipient of that. A friend of mine said, you really need a break. And we went up to his house on the ocean and we just spent a weekend just relaxing and talking and drinking and eating and hiking it was just a wonderful, wonderful time. And it was his treat. And he was just so supportive of me saying, you need a break from all the stuff you're dealing with. And it was wonderful for me and it was wonderful for him. And that was something that I didn't ask for, but again, he was one of those people like me that found it uplifting to help other people. And all I did was tell him all weekend, like how great this was, how appreciative I was, how wonderful this was, how much I needed this. This is like what, a gift this was. And so, he got to be the recipient of this massive appreciation as well. So anyway, one of the thoughts in society that's a horrible, 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 horribly destructive thought is that the quote unquote right, proper thing to do is to put others before us. No, wrong. Don't do that. It'll destroy your life. You'll die angry. I can almost guarantee it. You'll die angry. So don't do that. What else have I got here on my list? One of them is that if you follow all the basic rules of society, you'll be happy. So I never got in trouble as a kid. I went to Berkeley, one of the top universities in the world. I got a chemical engineering degree, one of the most challenging degrees you could get at Berkeley. I got a job at a company at the time was number 5 in the Fortune 500. I got good reviews. I got promoted. I got married. I was faithful to my wife. And guess what? My wife left me for somebody else and I was miserable. And I was really pissed off because I felt that I had done like what I was supposed to do in life. And my reward was supposed to be that I was going to be happy. Right. So I followed all the rules. I did all the things you're supposed to do. I thought I was supposed to do. And I didn't end up happy. So I felt that I was lied to and I was cheated and I was pissed off. And so I said, well, you know what? Doing what everyone else, not everybody, but a lot of people recommended, right, as the way to a happy, fulfilling, joyful life, did not work for me. So I set about trying to find out, okay, well, if this doesn't work, what will? And certainly I stumbled across spiritual growth, and that just did it for me. That just gave me the exhilaration, the depth of feeling, of understanding, of growth, of purpose that I was looking for. It was something that I felt that I could joyfully commit myself to 100%. And what I've learned through my adventures in spiritual growth over more than 40 years of being intensely focused in my own growth, one of the many things I've learned is that, well, one is example is the most powerful form of leadership. So that's one of the reasons that I share these videos. The main one is to ingrain the wisdom that I've discovered more deeply within me. So if I believe in it enough to share it with you, then I'm aligned more fully with my principles, and so I can think, act, behave all in alignment with my principles, and that's the main reason I do it. And if you get benefit out of it, is based on the thousands of downloads I've had, I'm gonna assume that people are getting benefit out of it. Hope so. But my point is that I needed to follow what I was inspired to do, what I felt good about doing, what I resonated with, and made that more important than what I felt society was telling me, which was, get a good education, get a good job, obey all the rules, and you'll be happy. And that, thank God it works for some people, right? At least I hope it does. But for me, not so much. Which brings me to another commonly held thought in society, and that is that defer to the experts. And I'm fond of saying for every expert, there's an equal and opposite expert. And I've seen people suffer horribly by following the advice of experts. Now, some people do well, okay, but some people do horribly, right? So it's not, this is not one size fits all or one size doesn't fit all. And and specifically in the medical field is an area where I've really been very frustrated with the lack of success in following medical advice given by others. And sometimes the medical advice is good, but oftentimes it's ineffective, wrong, bad, inappropriate for me and the people that are close to me who I love. And what I say is that we need, I believe, at least for myself, that I need to trust myself more than I trust any external expert. So if people say, oh, well, that's not going to work for you, but I'm certain it's going to work for me, and I just know it's going to work for me, you know what? It works for me. Doesn't matter if other people say it's unrealistic or won't work. If I believe it's going to work and I'm confident it's going to work, it almost always works. Maybe not always, but certainly almost always. And similarly, if I get advice that I don't resonate with and I take that advice, almost never works for me. So I've learned that it's more important, more valuable, works better to trust myself more than I trust any expert. Now, I might consult an expert. I might listen to what they have to say. But then I evaluate it based on how much I resonate with it. I was coaching somebody one time, and she was having a very hard time overcoming a physical problem. And I said, well, as you investigate this wide range of modalities that you're considering, at least first, pursue the ones that you resonate with, that you feel good about, that you feel are supportive of you. I said, try those first, because those are the ones that have the best chance of working, as if you have that internal resonance with it. And she ended up resonating with some very unconventional stuff. But who cares how unconventional it was, because it worked for her and it solved her problem. Right? So it's like, would you rather have your problem solved, or would you rather go along with what is the supposed expert advice that doesn't work if you don't resonate with it in most cases? And, you know, and I'm sure there's exceptions to that. And I'm not a one size fits all guy. And I absolutely think that, you know, the medical profession does help a lot of people. And I'm not warning people off of doctors. I'm just saying, for me, what works, works. And for some people, you know, God bless them. And in many ways, I wish I was one of those people for whom the conventional, authoritative, accepted things to do to create outcomes worked. Be a lot easier for me. But it's not that way for me. And it's not that way for a lot of other people. And for the people that does work, God bless you, you know, count your lucky stars. That's all I can say. What else have I got here on my list? Forget about, at least in my case, I did not learn what I needed to know in school. And I was very upset about that, because as hard as I worked to get through college, I thought the least they could have done was teach me what I needed to know, and they didn't. Here's a few examples of what I've learned since being in college that really would have helped me a lot. One is that other people will like you pretty much as you like yourself. Two, I didn't learn to listen in college. I didn't learn to speak in college, and I didn't learn to write in college. And those were really important things. And in my first couple months on the job, the employer brought in outside instructors to teach us how to speak, write, and listen, because it's that important. And they knew that we didn't get that in college, but that to be successful at our jobs, we needed to know how to speak, how to write, how to listen, right? And so they taught us how to do that. And I was like, how could I have gone and gotten a degree from one of the top universities in the world where they didn't teach me how to speak, write, and listen? This is horrible, right? And there are a lot of other things. I mean, the social skills. If people like you enough, they'll make opportunities for you. There was a time I remember in my working career where a manager of one of the savings and loan branches that got shut down by the government, right? When the government like shut down most of the savings and loans. And I mean, it wasn't her mismanagement. She was just a cog in a big wheel, right? But she was so great that she got offered a job by somebody when they didn't even have a position open. But they said, you know what? We want to grab this lady because she's got so much talent and she's so good. And we'll want to hire her first to make sure she's part of our organization, and we'll figure out what she can do and what job function we can put her into later. And as it turned out, she eventually they had her pretty much running the whole show. But the idea is that, you know, if people you know, like, respect, and value you enough, they'll find a way to work with you. They'll find a way to work and have you contribute that value that they recognize in you to their organization. And, you know, and for me, it's even become more of a case of authenticity. And one of the things that I really believe that is like really important is to be myself and to understand who and what that is and what that means and so on and so on. And I've gotten jobs offered to me that I never applied for, over hundreds and hundreds of people that applied for those jobs that were eminently qualified for them. But I got the job and didn't even apply for it because I was just being me, and people were attracted to that authenticity. And that's another thing that I learned in college, you know, is that to be authentic and kind, which is part of authenticity, because we all have an innate kindness. We do. And that's part of who we are. So it's not being disingenuous to being kind. That is expressing an aspect of who we are, because we all are kindness. Kindness is part of our makeup. Whether we allow it expression or not, that's a different issue, but it's there, right? And so, you know, and I've learned that, you know, part of being authentic is being kind and accepting that part of me is kind and authenticity. And that's another thing that I didn't learn in college, the value of authenticity and the doors that will open for you is you're increasingly honest and authentic with kindness. I mean, one of the ways that I try to guide my behavior is to say, I want to tell the truth with all the kindness I can muster. So I want to be honest with people, but you know, you can be honest with people and be mean about it too, right? You know, or you can be honest with people and be nice and kind in the way that it's phrased and communicated. So I want to do my best. And again, you know, just like being a husband, right? I mean, sometimes I screwed up, right? But, you know, so it is being human. But to the best of my abilities, I try to be honest with all the kindness that I can muster. Really valuable thing. Should have learned it in school. Didn't learn it in school. So those are just some examples of the really, really, really valuable stuff that you kind of need to know to do really well that they don't teach you in school. I even offered to teach a class at the university, and I said, you didn't have to pay me, just a class about teaching people these things and other things that you need to know to do well. They went like, no, we don't want any part of it. It's, oh my God. I mean, don't you even care about your students? You know, it's like, no, we don't want it. It's, okay, I can't force you. What else? So a lot of people running around thinking that money will solve all their problems. And for sure, money will solve a lot of problems, but it won't solve all your problems. And so to people that, you know, if you sacrifice your integrity, if you sacrifice your health, well-being. I know a guy, and he was, you know, running like 10 miles, 15 miles at a shot. He was happy. He was kind. He was wonderful. And then he got this job. And he gave this job his whole life, and he stopped exercising, and he stopped spending so much time with friends, and he stopped doing this, and he stopped doing so much of the just joyful stuff that he was doing because he was so committed to doing this job. And he ended up working like, you know, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week kind of thing. And he got MS and died. Horrible death. And I believe that, you know, he ended up making his job and the money that he was earning more important than his health and well-being, and it came back and killed him. Can't prove any of that, of course, but that's what I believe, you know. I mean, so it's like sacrificing your health for money is a bad trade. And yes, we all need money. I need money, you need money, we all need money, yes. And there's got to be a way to get the money we need without killing ourselves, right? So, I mean, as I've often tried to say is that money is a tool, and its value is only existent to the extent that that tool is used to maximize experience of love, joy, and peace. So if we're using money to, do something wonderful that's uplifting and crazy great, then yeah, that's a proper use of money. And that's what it's there for, and that's what it should be used for. But if we're amassing money for its own sake, or in the hopes that it's going to raise our self-esteem and bring us peace and joy and happiness, can't deliver that. It can help. It's a piece of it. But by itself, it's not 100%. So maybe it's like 70% or 60%, right? The support we need to experience the happiness and the joy and the love that's available to us. But it's not 100%. And to expect it to be 100%, once again, is to set you up for disappointment. I mean, there are a lot of stories of these people that, they created this tremendous wealth, but they weren't really very happy with it. And then when they started using more of their wealth to help uplift other people with it, then they started to feel much greater. I mean, it's my understanding of the original Rockefeller, was in real bad health. And when he started creating foundations and contributing funds in ways that help people, he got better substantially. We all die eventually, right? But so, I mean, there are lots of cases and stuff, but the point is that money will solve some problems. Money will not solve all problems, right? I mean, one of the, it's an extreme example, and most people can't relate to it, I guess, because they're not the richest man in the world. But Howard Hughes, in his day, was the richest man in the world. And he was miserable at the end of his life. He was holed up in a hotel room in Las Vegas and, peeing in bottles and with the curtains blacked out and wouldn't leave his hotel room. And he was a miserable guy. I mean, there's no way he wasn't a miserable guy at the end. And this guy was the richest man in the world. I mean, he was a genius, I mean, created Hughes Aircraft, Hughes Tool and Die. I mean, he created amazing enterprises and stuff. And, wonderful engineer, but money didn't solve his problems. Didn't solve all of his problems. Certainly solved some of them, but not all of his problems. And so the idea that's very too prevalent in society is that money will solve all your problems, and it won't. And that too often people sacrifice their integrity for money. I had an opportunity one time to meet people in the mafia. And I was offered an introduction to them. And my response was, no, I don't want to meet those people. I don't want them to know my name. I don't want them to know that I even exist. Because boy, those things is like drug addiction, right? It's easy to get started, but it's hard. You just can't end it, right? Once the hooks are in you, the hooks are in you, and that's that. And so I said no, and turned and ran. And I'm glad I did, right? But I have no doubt that had I said yes, I could have gotten lots of money. But at what cost? And so I didn't do it. Person I spoke to respected my decision and never heard about it again. Thank God, right? Because selling my soul for money is not a good trade. Not a good trade. And, self-esteem, and I've done a lot of work on self-esteem. Self-esteem comes from accepting the magnificence of who we are. I'm a kind and wise person. I'm a brave and courageous person. I live my ideals and I'm proud of myself. I help myself and others. I'm proud of the life that I live. That's what creates self-esteem is accepting my qualities that, you know what, I'm a great meditator and I can pull wisdom out of the universe. That when I talk to a rabbi friend of mine, he explains to me that that's buried deep in the Quran somewhere, right? You know, it's like, well, I don't have to go to the Quran. I didn't meditate and I have access to all of that. And so I'm really proud of that. And I'm a strong and clear and excellent communicator. And I'm advancing win-win thinking in the world. And I'm doing this great stuff because as an expression of the fact in my acceptance that we're all one and we all rise and fall together. And that anytime I raise myself up, I raise you and everyone else up. And every time I raise you up, I raise myself and everyone else up. And boy, I'm telling you, that's the stuff that self-esteem is made of. Accepting our best qualities, taking ownership of our best qualities, and using our best qualities to improve our lives and the lives of others. That's what self-esteem is born of. It's not born of having the largest bank account. Who do you think, you know, had more self-esteem? Bernie Madoff, who ripped off all kinds of people in investments, or Gandhi, who was given huge amounts of money and never kept any of it for himself. He just passed it right through to try to accomplish good for people. Who do you think really had better self-esteem? You know, Mother Teresa, who was never really, you know, again, had a lot of money passed through her, but never took much for herself, right? Just what she took what she needed, right? And once you have what you need, then you don't need anymore. And so might as well, they call it deficiency need. If you don't have enough, right? If you don't have enough for food, shelter, clothing, you know, some, you know, to fund some joy in your life, you got to have that much, right? But once that's all taken care of and solid and secure, having like, you know, another $1 billion isn't going to improve your life, isn't going to really help your self-esteem. Not nearly as much, at least I don't believe, not in my case. I never had $1 billion, but had a bunch of money, not that much, but a bunch. And I can tell you that accepting my talents and abilities and using them in a way that benefits me and others has raised my self-esteem far more than when I earned just a ton of money. And I mean, and I earned the money ethically, and I didn't do anything that was shameful about it. I was honest and straight with everybody, and everybody came out better off, and it was all win-win, and that was all good, and all of that. But it was, and I felt good about it to the extent that I was using my talents and abilities to help other people and lift me and them up. So it was good. But the aspect of it that raised my self-esteem didn't have to do with the money. It had to do with using my talents and abilities to help myself and others. And that's what made the difference. So this idea that money will buy happiness, money will solve all your problems, while prevalent in society, is a lie. It will solve some of your problems, not all of them. And so I'm not saying, you know, money isn't important. It is important. It's just not the only thing that's important. It's not, money is not the only component of value. It is one of many components of value. But just because it's easy to measure doesn't mean that should be the yardstick that's used. A much better yardstick, while much harder to measure, is joy and happiness and vitality and alignment and laughter and happiness and love and peace and kindness. They're better measures of happiness and success than money, and they're much harder to measure. Just because it's harder to measure doesn't mean we shouldn't value it and we shouldn't choose to make joy and love and happiness and successful relationships are a measure of success. I have an uncle who is fond of saying, he says, I'm a rich, rich man. He said, I have friends and I have love in my life and I have joy in my life. It's like, yeah, you are. So, that's an example of somebody who really gets it. Let's see what else I've got here. Okay, we did that one. We did that one. All right, I think I covered what I wanted to cover. But the point is that it's very important and not to accept so much of what society says is accurate. You need to test it against what works for you. And more than 40 years ago, I created a spiritual program, which really didn't go very far, but it was good for me. And the hallmark of the program was what works, works. And so be aware, experiment, find out, pay attention to what works for you and do that. Because what works for you may or may not work for someone else. And what's important is to determine what works for you and then make it work for you for all it's worth, right? And maybe it works for you for a while and then it doesn't work for you anymore and you need to get a new tool or a new point of view or a new something else. But don't assume necessarily that what society says is going to work for you will work for you. Maybe it will, and I hope it does. I do. But if it doesn't, there is something that will work for you. And you need to find out what that is and exploit the living bejesus out of it, because we all need to be able to identify what works for us and use that effectively to improve our lives and the lives of all those around us. And I hope that this video has been helpful and encouraging and inspiring you to do that. So I guess we'll find out. All right, so that's it. I'm Scott Friedman, and you can reach me if you want to uncover the thoughts that are in your mind about what you think is successful and right and proper and beneficial and optimal thinking and behavior based on those thoughts. You can reach me by email at scottfriedman40@gmail.com, SCOTTFRIEDMAN40@gmail.com. And my books are available on Amazon. You can find links to them on my website, which is www.thoughtcoachingbyscott.com. And that's all for now. So identify what works for you and do that. And understand that what works for one person does not necessarily work for everybody. Okay. Bye.